Hello, Sean here. Here's the update for December 2025. So last month was a strange one to talk about. Most of it was spent tying up loose ends on SENTRY before closing out the year, followed by the usual pre-Christmas slowdown. On paper, it looks like a month with very little to report, but in reality it turned into a useful period of reflection, particularly around progression and how easily even well-intentioned systems can slide into grind if you're not careful. So let's frame this around what I've been doing mostly the last month. I played a hell of a lot of Ball Pit. It started out feeling like one of those forever games in the same space as Balatro or Vampire Survivors, but once I rolled credits, any desire to keep playing dropped off almost immediately. I'm not entirely sure, but I suspect leaning further into roguelite progression rather than roguelike progression was a big part of why I hit that off-ramp so hard. In Ball Pit, every step of progression makes the game easier by rewarding meta strategy, while largely ignoring mechanical mastery. It very quickly becomes a numbers game, remembering strong item combinations and synergies, then performing at a fairly low mechanical level. Now you could level a similar criticism at Vampire Survivors, but in my experience its progression introduces smaller, more incremental changes that eventually open the door to harder challenges through modifiers, and I never quite got that feeling with Ball Pit. And even if it was there, it wasn't signposted clearly enough for me to notice it. So, why am I going on about this? Well, because SENTRY sits somewhere in the same design space, and I'm constantly looking to other games for inspiration, and honestly for warnings. But there's another difference worth calling out as well. While Vampire Survivors and Ball Pit share a lot of the same gameplay verbs, exploration plays a totally different role. Even in well-explored Vampire Survivors maps, runs stay interesting thanks to how RNG interacts with the space. For example, once you know where pickups are placed, the question becomes when you grab them. And then, how many items do you stack first? How do you manage your slot limits? When do you commit? These decisions all matter. Ball Pit's grid, on the other hand, has no real exploration at all. That absolutely helps its pick-up-and-play nature, but over time, it also makes the experience feel less compelling and limited. So I feel at that level of strategy or meta progression, SENTRY kind of leans more towards Vampire Survivors, but it's a very different game. With that in mind, one area that's been up in the air in SENTRY for a while now is how SENTRY handles progression. From the outset, I wanted to avoid grind. There are few things I enjoy less than feeling obligated to repeat content just to inflate a number so I can nullify a challenge. It's just not fun to me. My goal has always been for players to learn how to overcome difficulty, not out-level it. The problem is, when you've been working on a game this long, blind spots inevitably form, and one of mine was just how easily almost anything can turn into a grind if you aren't careful. So let's talk about the design. SENTRY's run-based. Whether a run ends in success or failure, the next step is always the same, you just start another run. Rather than get lost in genre definitions, the important question for me was what kind of progression supports learning without undermining challenge? And spoiler, I think that's leaning into roguelikes. But one of our project pillars is to support an ever-expanding toolset. My interpretation of that was to lean into limited roguelite elements around equipment. So you can upgrade your gear during a run, but those upgrades are temporary. So essentially you'll lose those upgrades for the next run. New equipment, however, can be banked and added to the pool of possible future loadouts. So you essentially get to start with different stuff, based on the range of things that you've previously had. My assumption was basically that as long as progression expanded options rather than raw power, it wouldn't become a grind. But what I didn't account for was how quickly players would turn optional unlocks into a checklist, and then reshape the game around completing said checklist. What looked like healthy variety on paper quietly became an optimization problem. Players weren't grinding to beat the game, they were grinding to complete it. They wanted that off-ramp I was talking about from Ball Pit. So over the last couple of releases, I made a couple of changes to combat this. I removed campaign-specific equipment restrictions, so all gear could appear across all campaigns. Bear in mind, campaigns are essentially difficulty levels, currently. I also added an additional beacon option in the form of upgrades, which dramatically increased choice and effectively killed the ability to brute force the RNG, which was something I was seeing a lot of. I also split the equipment into more categories, like turrets. This further diluted the pool and provided clearer signposting for some of our more desirable items. Basically the turrets. I feel like these changes were more positive leaning. They weren't mean-spirited, or they weren't trying to unnaturally prolong the game. It was trying to make them enjoy the core of the game more. A related issue cropped up around upgrades themselves. Players were using starting resources to immediately level up equipment, resources that were originally meant to soften the randomness of starting loadouts. The unintended result was that upgraded gear became the baseline expectation, so if anyone did use the system the way it was meant to be used, compared to a previous run, they would feel underpowered. And players really started resenting the fact that they were losing upgrade potential just to get equipment they wanted. To me, this was a textbook case of giving too much too soon. So yeah, I cut the starting resources. There are a couple of ships that still give you starting resources, but that's specific to them and you lose other things for doing that. So going back to the ever-expanding toolset pillar, that idea actually falls apart if players lock into a build almost immediately, because they might be ever-expanding their toolset across multiple runs, but in a single run, they're kind of zeroing in and locking down. So I trimmed the equipment tech trees and rebalanced the economy, all in order to make each upgrade feel more meaningful, and the result is a much more deliberate opening to each run, where early decisions matter again. Okay. Now, I wasn't expecting to deep dive into a specific design problem I've been having, but it's been on my mind, and I wanted to kind of get it off my chest, so it's kind of dominated this update. But I'm not really sure where these updates are kind of going in the future. I think maybe I want to kind of talk about specific design problems I've been having rather than a general monthly update. But in the spirit of this being potentially the final one, I should mention that I've also been making really good progress on something in the water. If you keep an eye on the community tab or on the Discord, you'll start seeing glimpses of new areas very soon. I've been working on the 2nd level, polishing up the 4th level. Things are starting to come together. There's a lot of mechanical stuff I still need to work on, but realistically I need to get a Steam page up, and for that I need some kind of trailer or video or footage to work from to sell the idea. So I need to basically do more visual work before the mechanical work can be finished. It feels a bit backwards, but it's kind of needed on the marketing front. So that's about all I've got time to cover right now. I hope you've all had a great year. Mine's been productive. I hope that next year's more productive. There are a lot of things that I missed, which I'll probably get into in a future video. But yeah, I hope everyone's had a good time. I hope everyone's had a good year, and here's to a positive and more productive 2026. Thanks for listening.